In addition, the Julius Rosenwald Foundation is responsible for the construction of over 5,000 schools, most of these schools primarily built for Southern blacks. Why was Rosenwald so interested in helping black people? Rosenwald himself came from an immigrant family of Jewish merchants. As a young man, he learned the family trade as an apprentice in New York and began making clothes. This led to his partnership with Sears Roebuck, who allowed him to buy shares in the company after they were having financial trouble. The company revived under Rosenwald, and he became wealthy. Rosenwald, while working as a young man, developed a close friendship with Henry Goldman, another second-generation German Jew, who was best known for Goldman Sachs, a prime brokerage investment firm that his father Marcus founded in Bavaria, Germany.
Okay.
Rosenwald had other powerful friends as well,
Goldman
who would all
Sachs?
be instrumental in helping him and people like him become the face of simulated social reform. These men used their millions to champion the new black agenda. When tracing the money to some of the most prominent black organizations of the past, one is left with one very common denominator. This denominator is the deception behind the miseducation of the Negro, a history signed and sealed in an African slavery-connected identity delivered to you by ignorant or compromised Negroes who have been indoctrinated into a false dogmatic historical cover-up. When reading the words of black scholars of the past, there seems to be a romanticized relationship between these authors and their supposed African heritage. In W.E.B. Du Bois' renowned work, The Souls of Black Folk, the reference to Africa was made nearly a dozen times. In each reference, the word Africa or African is inserted into the text to draw comparison by similarity between African and Black American culture. And consistently, in each case, Du Bois provides no credible historical background into the analytical significance of his comparison.
So Du Bois was a fraud out here? Du Bois W was a fraud? Nah, man. This is why we like these little YouTube docs.
Conjecture, leading the reader into bias.
But it's interesting though, because what if? There's always the what if for real.
In page 196, Du Bois makes a definitive statement.
Such then is the large development of the Negro Church since emancipation. The question now is, what have been the successive steps of this social history and what are the present tendencies? First, we must realize that no such institution as the Negro Church could rear itself without defined historical foundations. These foundations we can find if we remember that the social history of the Negro did not start in America. He was brought from a defined social environment, the polygamous clan life under the headship of the chief and the potent influence of the priest. His religion was nature worship with profound belief in invisible surrounding influences, good and bad, and his worship was throughout incarnation and sacrifice. The first rude change in this life was the slave ship and the West Indian sugar fields. The plantation organization replaced the clan, and I can't even see what the words is, but I just want to see, like, really
the social history of the Negro did not start in America.
Okay.
With just this statement alone, W.E.B. Du Bois threatens the historical credibility of his entire career of works. Understanding the original American was reclassified as African and Negro in the century prior to his birth is a reflection never echoed in his work. Furthermore, the reclassification of a people and lacking in acknowledgement of heritable indigenous rights is verifiable treachery.
So he's saying Du Bois was kind of using his influence to manipulate the African Americans into thinking that, okay, it's kind of scary.
If Du Bois was a true historian, then he would have developed his own legitimate historical perspective and outline concerning the history of the so-called African American. Instead, his writings are the bougie Zionist propagated social commentaries of an uppity Negro.
He don't like Du Bois at all.
As someone who had completed an entire database in which he had gathered census information on Southern American plantation owners and slave statistics, Du Bois never dedicated any of his writings toward the indigenous American culture that existed on the continent prior to colonialism and its connection to blacks in America. If anything, Du Bois could have been an instrument of the first American black regional beef. Instead of East versus West Coast rappers, it was Northern versus Southern Negroes. In writings that allude to the Northern Negro as progressive and the Southern Negro as a peon or pauper. His work, however, doesn't come completely without historical legitimacy, but instead narrated from the perspective of an outsider or spectator. In his book, The Souls of Black Folk, on page 48, Du Bois makes quick reference to the mulatto immigrants from the West Indies who immigrated to the North, whom had demanded to be considered freemen on the basis that they would seek assimilation and amalgamation with the nation on terms with other men. One of the families implicated in his text was an ode to his own ancestry. In his own words, the Du Bois family of New Haven sought to be not as slaves and not as Negroes. To be accurate, Du Bois, as the name suggests, was not American or even African for that matter. He claimed African ancestry from his mother's side, but his mother's Burghardt lineage wasn't black. His mother's grandfather was apparently a West African slave, but the Burghardt lineage was definitely Anglo-Dutch.
So he's mixed, which seems like to be the case with a lot of the African American leaders. It's mostly like the mixed folk, because the fairer skin seems to make people more comfortable, I guess. I don't know, but this is kind of disappointing.